All right, hello guys. Today we are talking about warm-ups for your training. And specifically, I'm asking you the question, how long is your warm-up? Now, the reason why I want to talk about this today is warm-ups are often advocated for being, one of the best things we can do with our training. It's often advocated to help prepare the body for exercise, reduce the risk of injury, get you all pumped up, improve your performance, whatever it may be. And absolutely, I agree that warm-ups should be a part of your training. And I do think it is something that shouldn't be neglected. And I think every single hiker should be incorporated in one way or another. But what I often see, and what I've often seen in the gym, through my clients, through whatever it may be, is sometimes warm-ups, they get out of hand and they just take too long, they're not efficient, and they start eating into your training time. And I see people doing crazy long warm-ups in the thoughts that they're doing something good and doing something necessary. But what's happening is it's just, it's not necessary. And the time spent warming up could potentially be spent training. And even if we think about finding extra 5 minutes of training in every single training session you're doing, over the days, over the weeks, over the months, over the years, that really adds up. Now, I'll be full disclosure here. I have gone into this trap before, and I have been in this situation where my warm-ups were way too long and unnecessary. This was the days when I was probably early 20s. All my life, I'd never had any issues with aches or pains when it comes to training. I'd never had any issues with mobility. I used to be able to roll in, jump under a bar and start squatting and be able to squat pretty heavy within a few minutes. But then, for whatever reason, I started getting a bit older. I started sitting at a desk a bit more, or whatever it may be. I started getting a little bit tighter in certain areas. And this was leading into some restrictions in movements. I wasn't feeling so comfortable. I was feeling a little bit dodgy. I was getting a little bit of aches and pains here and there. And then I was like, you know what? I better start doing some warm-ups. And initially, that was like 10 minutes. And then I started doing 15 minutes, then 20 minutes, then 30 minutes. And then, oh my gosh, it's crazy to think about it. But I used to, at one stage, I got up to the point where I would warm up for 45 minutes before doing a training session, which is mental to think about. And back then, it wasn't that much of an issue because I worked in a gym. I lived next to my gym. I would literally have 2 or 3 hour gaps in between clients, so training for 2 hours was not an issue. Most of my friends worked near that gym or came into that gym, so it'd still be a socialing. So it wasn't the worst thing in the world, but looking from a purely training perspective, it was a tremendous waste of time. So what I want to say today is, in all honesty, your warm-ups leading into your training, so whether it's your strength training, whether it's your interval training, whether it's your pack work or whatever it may be, it really shouldn't be more than 10 minutes or so. Really, it should be short and sharp and to the point. And on top of that, in my opinion, I think as part of your warm-up, it shouldn't just be sort of something just to get you through the session. There should be incorporated stuff that is kind of productive and kind of keeps you moving forward in small ways. Now, what I mean by that, as an example of what I typically do for my warm-ups for my hikers leading into training sessions. If they're doing a strength session, I'll typically ask them to do maybe 2 to 3 mobility exercises to start with. So they might do something to loosen up the ankles, maybe something to loosen up the hamstrings, maybe something to loosen up the hips. That'll sort of take 5 minutes or so. It won't take long. And then from there, we'll say, okay, as part of your warm-up, we're going to do some sort of stability stuff. So we're going to sort of work on some of the sort of smaller muscle groups or slower movements, which don't really use much load. They're not super difficult, but they can be beneficial over time. So we might do a little bit of glute strengthening. We might do a little bit of abdominal work. We might do some balance work. We might be doing some hip flexor strengthening or whatever it may be. Everyone's a little bit different. But basically, that is part of the warm-up. And we might spend about 5 minutes doing that. But in those periods of those strengthening exercises, month by month, we tend to make that a little bit harder, do a little bit, progress those exercises, add a little bit extra resistance. So it's not just warming up, but it's kind of strengthening and progressing those areas as well. And I find that's really beneficial. So typically for my hikers, in this 10-minute period, we've done some mobility exercises, loosened up the joints. we've done a little bit of core, we've done a little bit of glute work or balance or whatever it may be. And by the end of the 10 minutes, not only are you feeling ready to exercise, not only are you feeling fresh, not only are you feeling sort of pumped up and ready to go, but we've also fit in a reasonable amount of productive work. And by sticking things to about 10 minutes or so, over time, that can really, really, really give you a lot of extra benefit and really, really give you a lot of extra time to fit into your training. Now, admittedly, some people like to prefer to start their workouts a little bit slower. Some people prefer to do a different approach, and that's absolutely fine. But really what I'm trying to say is this, is if your warm-ups are taking 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 30 minutes, and I know there are some people out there doing that, you might want to think about cutting it down. You might want to think about finding a bit more of an efficient way. You might want to find out a way of just sort of getting you into these sessions a bit quicker in a way that you're still comfortable, because over time that can make a pretty dramatic difference. So have a think about it. How long are your warm-ups taking? If they're taking a while, maybe it's time to cut them down. Now, if you do want some ideas around this, if you want some examples, if you want some sort of ideas around what I do with my clients, maybe some example exercises of what I was mentioning there about my stability exercises or whatever it may be, if you want to find a few more ideas on that, I would absolutely love if you come and find me in the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. Now, inside that group, as I always say, I'm more than happy to expand on these subjects, share video tutorials, give extra information, answer any questions or whatever it may be. So if you want to find that, that's the Training for Hiking and Trekking Facebook group. I'll leave a links in the show notes below. But thank you very much for listening today. I really do hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you got a little bit out of it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.